it becomes essential to be regulated if you want to be a good horse rider. It goes wrong when people are just pumping for power and power and power, because that's what's winning. I've never heard a rider actually stop and go, my horse has limits and I'm not pushing them, because to make that horse piaffe, to wake him up enough to piaffe, I would have had to do really bad things to him. My curiosity has led me to study more, to think more, to observe more, and my patience has stopped me doing the things that you regret later. It'll probably get me in trouble telling you about it, but
This season is brought to you by the Harry Hall One Club. Hello everybody, welcome back. Season 6 of This Equestrian Life. Who'd have thought we'd make it to season 6, Ree? How cool.
I know, very cool. I'm excited to be back.
And I feel like we may have finally just mastered the intro for the first time, as in we didn't talk over each other. Normally Ree and I do this thing where we're like, hello, and we're like talking over each other. How have you been? How are things? How's the break been?
Good. The break's been good, and it has been welcome. I think, you know, podcasts, I mean, we do like one a week, but some people do lots, and like it takes a lot of time and effort, because you're like recording, then you're listening to the recording, then you're emailing a guest, and da-da-da-da. So it has been good. And actually, the weather has been very hot in the UK in the last few weeks, and is about to get hot again next week.
Yay.
And poor Harley, he is actually built brilliantly for winter, because I hardly have to rug him up at all, because he runs quite warm. But in the hot weather, he really struggles. And even being in during the day in this lovely airy barn and out at night, he was like having showers like 3 times a day, because he just like gets really hot. So we just haven't done anything. Actually, I didn't ride him at all last week, and my coach was due to ride him as well while I was away with work, and she didn't. We just sacked it off, and he just had a week off. And that really suited him. And he's come back actually feeling really lovely and jolly. And yeah, it's been good.
That's nice. I mean, a break is never a bad thing, I don't think, especially for young horses. I think it's one of those where we often think it's going to be worse or do something wrong, and actually it's just good for their bodies. I remember having a conversation with a client once, and she said she was purchasing a young horse that I had backed, and I talked to her and I said, oh, you know, do you plan to give him a holiday and this sort of thing? And she said, well, actually, I've done some research, and I don't entirely know where she got this from, but it does make quite a lot of sense that giving a horse like a fortnight of no work is almost better than turning them away completely, because you give them a fortnight every couple of months, and it's when they're growing and they're changing, it's quite a good way, because you don't lose all of their fitness, you just lose a bit rather than all of it. You know, they kind of maintain a certain amount of it. I don't know, it's just an interesting concept, and I've thought about it every now and then, and I try not to worry too much if I give my horses some downtime. I don't think it ever is a bad thing, and the hot weather has just been brutal, so
yeah. Also, I think it depends on the horse. Like, he's quite a relaxed young man in most scenarios, except for when he's, you know, feeling anxious about being out hacking or something, but he's quite chill. Like, you can pick him up and put him down. The only time I notice it really is when he hasn't schooled in a little while, and you first get on and you just don't have his shoulders and you don't have his rib cage. And so, but actually the older he's got, the quicker that comes back. And I was saying, we were hacking the other day, a friend and me, and I was like, oh, he's just getting to that lovely age now where everything is just like chef's kiss, because he's 8 now, and he's just, and I always said to people, wait till he's 10. Because I feel like the Irish drafts in particular, they're just lovely when they're a little bit older. And he's just so easy. Like, I was like pulling branches off the trees because they were like in the way. And I was like splitting them in half over him and then chucking them into the hedge and like doing all sorts. And he just doesn't give a shit. Doesn't care.
Oh, that's so nice.
I know.
Love that. We love a positive update. Oh, God, there's a kitten on the table. This happens a lot at the moment. These kittens have learnt that they can climb on things, and now that's what they do. So if I get interrupted by a cat, sorry everyone, hope you can edit it out, Ellie. Maybe they'll come and purr down the microphone for a bit, because that is a nice noise.
Have your ponies?
Yeah, good. I mean, we've been struggling with the heat too. I'm obviously navigating this new, navigating the farm as such, not knowing how things are going to work out and how things are going to feel. And our barn was hot. Like, we were in the same position, like washing them off multiple times a day. And George has sort of set up a gym at ours now, his own just private, literally just like a CrossFit box. I'm doing some air quotes. It's really cool. It means I'm actually going to get to do some work in the gym again, because I haven't been going and I haven't been looking after myself in that way. But he bought some fans for it. And the other day I ordered some fans and then the order got cancelled. Infuriating. I think because demand is just so high and I wasn't organised. And I'm annoyed at myself that I wasn't organised in advance enough. But so I borrowed these 2 fans from George's gym, and they did actually make an enormous difference. And that's something to maybe think about for Harley, is having a fan set up. And because I was having a conversation with a client in Florida, talking about climate change and how this is real. Like, I saw something the other day and it was like, climate change doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. And I was like,
literally.
Literally. And so I was talking to her because in Florida, it's often this, 30 something degrees centigrade and really, really humid. And I said to her, how do you handle it? And she said, with fans.
Yeah, I've seen that.
With airflow. That's a big part. And then also in Europe, they use misting. Machine. They use misters, which is really interesting. Yeah. So it's all of these things. And I'm thinking like, yes, they are a bit of initial setup. I'm literally wrangling cats away from the computer right now. It is initial setup, but then I will be set up and then I can really offer this safe kind of indoor space for the horses out of the sun, because it's different. It is different and we're not set up for it in the UK.
So 2 things on that. One on the fans, but the first thing is I was chatting to Feedmark, who are my supplement partners, and they also have this great product which I'm going to try for Harley next week. They're sending me some called Replenish, and it's like electrolytes, so you can like put it in the feed, put it in the water, and I'm interested. I'm going to feed it in a separate bucket. Put it in a separate bucket of water, so that if he doesn't like it, it's not like he can't drink, which I think is a good recommendation for anything you're putting in their water. But
like a water buffet.
A water buffet, exactly, like a track livery. But I have looked at fans, and what scared me a little bit, because in our yard, it would make sense only if you had like a battery powered fan that you could host, and the girls or the yard team can turn it on and off, which is fine. But then I saw a comment from somebody on Facebook, which I thought was fairly legit, saying that it needs to have, it's called something TECRF or something like that. Basically means the motor is enclosed. So you need to have a fan that doesn't let dust and straw, because it can become a fire hazard, is basically what people were saying. So they were like, if you're going to get a fan for the horses in a barn or something, you just need to make sure that it's not too open. But it's actually really difficult to find this. I was searching with this in mind, and it's not like it's in the description or anything. And then some people were saying, but that doesn't exist in battery powered fans and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it sent me on a whole rabbit hole, and it scared me enough I just didn't buy a fan.
I love that. Well, this is interesting because I had ordered some fans from Toolstation, and and then I got an email to say they'd been refunded, and I was like, that's interesting. So now I'm going to take your information and make sure that I purchase the right thing, because nobody wants a fire. I was looking for fans that were used on building sites, because I was like, surely, well, that's the kind of thing. That is the kind of thing I've been looking at, is these industrial drum fans, they're called. So they've got an exterior. God, this has taken a boring turn, hasn't it? Us talking about fans.
I think this is quite interesting, because a lot of people are looking for fans. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? If you were looking for fans, let us know.
Yeah, I'll put my recommendations into the show notes when I find them. I'm going to take a moment to talk about the season sponsor of this podcast, the Harry Hall One Club. Now, as an equestrian, you know how unpredictable life with horses can be, and how having the right insurance cover can make you feel more at ease. But most of us can begrudge paying out for insurance each month, because sometimes it feels like it doesn't offer much value unless you actually need to make a claim. That is where our sponsor for this season, Harry Hall One Club, is refreshingly different. Harry Hall One Club is the go-to equestrian membership that combines insurance and money-saving perks together in one simple package from as little as £5.75 per month. So what's the deal? It's simple. To get insurance with Harry Hall One Club, you just need to sign up to become a One Club member, but then you get public liability, personal accident and equine legal expenses cover, plus extra money-saving perks thrown in too. That's the bit we really like. When you join as a One Club member, you get perks included such as legal helpline, 24/7 counselling service, free delivery, returns and exclusive discounts on harryhall.com, partner offers, and event tickets. It helps you ensure you're getting your money's worth all year round, even if you never need to make a claim. In addition to the insurance included as standard, you can also choose to add on other types of cover like vet fees, tack, transport and breakdown cover as well. One Club membership is a fit for every equestrian, whether you loan, own, ride or you don't have a horse at all. With transparent pricing, you pay the same as everyone else, and they truly believe that every horse matters, so the price is the same for every horse. They don't ask you to choose your favourite horse or if you own more than one. It's handy for me. And you can add multiple horses with no extra premium and share your vet fee cover across all of them. Members trust Harry Hall too, with thousands of excellent reviews and a reputation built since 1891, with a track record of paying over 99% of valid claims within 14 days and over 95% of their reviewers recommending Harry Hall. Plus, you'll always get friendly Yorkshire-based support whenever you need it. And if you need any more reasons to convince you to become a member, they also donate thousands of pounds to equine charities on your behalf, like their charity partner of 2026, our friends at Red Wings Horse Sanctuary. Take their 2-minute quiz via the link in the show notes and it'll help you find out which membership level might be fit for you. Plus, when you join and get cover, you'll receive a £10 gift voucher to spend at harryhall.com. You can also use our code SADDLEUP10 for 10% off their whole website. And if it's not for you, you can cancel within 14 days. No stress. Join One Club and get your cover today. But no, other than that, horses have been good. Interestingly, my vet was here this week. Belle has been struggling with her locking stifle, and it infuriates me because stifle's a really complicated joint, and if anybody out there is a specialist in this and want to tell me what they do, then I would really like to know, because her stay apparatus, so the thing that stops her from, you lock your knees out.
When it locks, when they're sleeping and stuff.
Well, it's doing it all the time.
Oh.
It does it just for them to stand up.
Oh.
But if I ask her to walk backwards a step, it goes blop.
Ooh.
Right? No, exactly. It makes you go, ooh. And that must hurt, okay? I get to the point and I'm thinking, this can't be comfortable for this horse. She's 10. Was she 11? Either. Old enough to be fully grown. And I was going on and on about this, and there is a minor surgery that you can do. But then my vet was like, yes, but it can cause damage to the patella, because their stifle is your kneecap, right?
Oof. Yeah, so where's the patella?
As in the kneecap, that's the cap.
It's the bony. I was thinking I was imagining a muscle. Okay, fine.
But if you put your hand on your knee now,
yeah.
It doesn't move, right?
No.
It's stabilised. Hers isn't stabilised, right? But there is a thing that you can do where you do this minor surgery, but it can then mean that then you get wear and tear on the patella. So I've been going round and round and all these different things and thinking about whether I can do something about it. Anyway, we settled. He saw her. And he's really great, my vet. He's really pragmatic, and he's doesn't want to just do things because they're a fad or they could, might be the right thing, but it might not. He's very evidence-based. Yeah. And so we looked at her and he was like, look, she is not presenting with a load of discomfort. She doesn't love it when you do a high flexion. So there is something going on, but it's not she then trots away sound. She's not positive on flexion as such. It's minor. So we've opted for doing some medication of hyaluronic acid, which is something that is already pre-existing in the body. And he said, this is what we all used to do, a long time ago. This is how we kind of started out with joint care, was putting hyaluronic acid in. So we opted to do that. And it was really interesting because he said, this is our first line of defense, if that makes sense. We can help her here, and now you can go off and you can do a big load of rehab and see what happens and see whether we see a change and an improvement. And while he was here, I got him to look at Zora, because I get in my head about her. She has really mild arthritis in both of her hind fetlocks from when she had OCD when she was young, and I bought her not knowing and did some work with her, and it flared up, so she had to have surgery. So I'm always in the back of my head and look thinking, is she hurting? Is there something wrong? She has a tiny little wingle on the left hind now, a little bit of filling around the fetlock. And I basically got him to have a look at her as well. And I don't know if this is totally relevant, but it was really interesting because he flectioned her and we looked at her in the same way that we'd looked at Belle, and he was like, this horse isn't currently presenting us with any reason to do anything about it. There is this little bit of cosmetic inflammation. And I don't know if this is helpful to anybody that maybe suffers with worrying about their horse anxiety, because historically with her, she has had discomfort and it has made her use her body the wrong way. And it was cool, actually. I put her hoof boots on to do this because there are some stones on the lane. And I was like, well, I don't want her to be looking like feeling different because of just some stones.
Yeah.
And she was really confidently moving, and he was like, look, you're doing all the right things. Keep going. Like, don't stop now. And it was so helpful to me. And I think sometimes if we feel like we're not sure, and it made me think of the conversation that you and I had before about Harley. And almost I'm there like, actually, for me, I'd rather have a check-in too soon and be given reassurance or be able to do something about it than not. And I don't know, I didn't know if that was a helpful thing for people to hear, that as a professional, that's the way I'm trying to operate. I'd rather prevention is better than cure sort of feeling. And I don't know, it just felt like a really good thing to have done. And it feels like it's given me a lot of confidence in kind of doing fun things. And going to Wellington in a couple of weeks for this big horsemanship masterclass with Mia and Will Rogers and Brendan Wise and all these incredible horse people. And I'm thinking, am I meant to be here? But I've been invited, so I'm going to go. And I feel really good to take my horses, because they've had some help from the vet. I don't know if I'm going to take Belle, actually. I don't know whether she'll be feeling strong enough by then. But it's just, I don't know. It was just a cool thing. And it felt helpful to have had that check-in.
I think where I've landed on that sort of like subject is I used to worry a lot. And then I think the mindset training has helped, but also just knowing Harley more has helped. And I really trust myself now. There's been several things I've picked up on really early where other people have been like, he's fine. And I've been like, no, he isn't. I can tell. And now I trust him to tell me, hey, that doesn't feel good, or I don't feel good. And I trust myself to be able to see it. I picked up his eye ulcer because he was holding his eye slightly differently to the other, and nobody else could see it. And I was like, it's definitely wrong. I picked up his kind of slightly gassy, colicky moment when he was just slightly quieter. I picked up something else. I can't remember what it was. Oh, when he was sore, that was it. And anyway, so I'm like, my contract with myself and with him is like, you have all the professionals, you can call them anytime. Keep doing all the right things, focusing on your training, your nutrition, the lifestyle, the movement, Keep looking at him, keep talking to him, he will tell you. And it's funny because my physio said that. She was like, he is sensitive. She was like, but he will always tell you pretty early when something isn't right. And it's funny because I had the saddler today to get my new jump saddle. So fun. Had a little jump on him, and she actually said after, Mandy was like, he just looks like such a fun horse. And I'm like, he is fun, Mandy. I was like, he is a pony in a horse's body, and he brings out my inner child. Like, he is just so fun. And he is very funny about, like, if the girth isn't done up enough and it slightly moves the saddle, he's just like, that's not for me. And it's always in canter, and I think it's because of the way I sit, maybe. And if that girth is not done up enough and I'm cantering, he like puts his ears back and he does this little thing with his back where it comes up and then he just stops and he's like, fix it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I look at my girth and I'm like, oh, the girth isn't done up enough. And then I put the girth up and he's absolutely great. He's like, great, thanks. He's so funny. I love him.
So you've got a new saddle now?
Got a new saddle. So I've got my dressage and I've now got a jump, which is the same tree that Blondie is in. So Harley and Blondie are in the same tree. And it's a mono flap. I've actually gone I
don't actually have a saddle right now. So it was in the saddle that I was riding in, but that now has been, anyway.
Okay.
Sore spot. Keep going.
Okay. And I think maybe controversially, well, not controversially, but my bridle is black, but I've actually gone for a Havana brown because, I don't know, I just think he looks great in brown, and I feel like jump saddles are brown, and I don't know. I did go back and forth. And I was like, and then actually it's funny because like when she pulled out the brown, I was like, did I want a brown? And she was like, I can't remember if we said brown or black. She was like, did you want a black one? And I was like, I was like, actually, no, I really like the brown on him. And I've been riding in a brown jump saddle that I've borrowed from her for like weeks, and I've never noticed the difference. So I've just kept it. But it's been great.
You could get him a little jumping bridle, couldn't you? Brown
I
one.
know, but his is bespoke, his actual bridle, and it cost me like hundreds of pounds.
Well, you could maybe buy a less magic bridle. Don't know. I say that like I'm not riding around on Zora in a rope halter most of the time these days, or no bridle at all, or B, a bridle made up of two different types of bridle that is brown and my saddle is black. So you do whatever you like, actually.
Maybe I could. It would be nice. I do need to get some new like stirrup leathers, but my stirrups are really expensive too, and I was like, I don't think I can justify having 2 sets of tech stirrups, because they were actually a gift from the brand, but they are very
You know what you should
expensive.
do? Secondhand that.
I did look, but I can't get the right colour. They're all like blue. And I
am a Facebook marketplace. No, I'm not professional because I do get scammed sometimes. But I really enjoy Facebook Marketplace. We have been kitting out the home gym with marketplace items.
I do love
It's remarkable how many things people list on Facebook Marketplace and then do not then follow up with being for sale. Such an odd thing to do.
Yeah,
people put them on, you send them a message, and then they don't reply. And they read your messages.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why do you not actually want to sell it? Why did you bother putting it on Facebook Marketplace? Such an odd thing.
It is weird. I think people forget about them, don't they?
Maybe. Yes, maybe. Well, no, because anyway, another strange conversation. Yeah. We've got so much cool stuff coming up in this season, though. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's good. It's a really good mix. Like, as you'll hear, as you'll probably know from the title, we kick things off with Rochelle King-Andrews, dressage rider in Australia. She has a great TikTok following. That's how I found her. And I actually think that conversation, I think it pushed both of us at points to like, it stretched us in our thinking in terms of like what we're comfortable with, and maybe we're not what we're comfortable with, but I think it made us stretch, and that is the point of the podcast. I think we don't ever want to sit and be too comfortable all the time. And I think she was very eloquent about the sport, about the way she trains her horses, and it was good. I enjoyed it a lot.
One of the things, actually, that has happened a number of times during the break is we've received some messages from you guys that we absolutely love. Please, please, please drop us an email. We love to hear an email from you guys. I've had messages on Instagram of people saying that this podcast has changed the way they think about their horse. And like, wow, gosh, that's huge. The power that holds, just getting people to broaden their perspective. Horse riding, equestrianism is quite an old fashioned thing, really. And, there's a lot of, we've always done it like that. This is the way. And I think, and I hope that this season as well will even take us even further into that. Can we do things differently? I won't spoil it by, telling you all of the guests that we're going to be having, but we're having really forward-thinking, future-proof conversations, I think. And I don't know, it just feels really cool to be doing that. And if we've helped one person, then that's a big thing. That's Alice. I didn't realise that, but Alice Benham, who came on the podcast very early on, she has that tattooed on her, because I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning this.
1 for 1, is that it? Is it something like that?
Yeah, something like that. But basically, she did a talk once, and one person came, and
she was gutted.
She was gutted, but also it taught her that actually, if what she's doing is just for one person, and it helps one person, then that isn't a very, very powerful thing. And I think that's true for us. And I feel like it's a really, what a wonderful thing that we've created. I'm really excited to keep having these really cool conversations. And this conversation with Rochelle was that exactly, she's a Grand Prix rider. She competes at the highest level, and she spoke so candidly about the realities of the equestrian sport. She goes on to talk about, really, I don't know, some of the things that maybe people are a bit scared to talk about. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as we did.
Just while you were talking, Miri, I was looking through our messages, because when we get messages from people, obviously we want to make sure that both of us see it, because often they'll message one of us or they'll message the email or whatever. And I got this really lovely one during the break that said, Hi, I just wanted to say, because of what you said on the podcast, I hopped off halfway home from a hack this week and had a lovely walk back to the yard with my boy. And then she asked a question about the bridle setup I have. But I was like, that's just nice. Like, I think it's just like having a person in your head or a friend in your head to be like, to open up and be like, oh, this is okay. Like, human behaviour has been signed off. You know what I mean? That sounds weird. But what I mean is like, you know that someone else in the world has tried this. And it's not just you. It's just cool.
I think as well that topic is really validating for people. Like I have had lots of conversations with people. In fact, one of the girls that works for me, she said to me that she was feeling like she was getting to the point where she was ready to go for a hack, ridden hack. She's been doing loads in hand and she's completely changed the way she does things. You know, grew up on traditional event yards, had some really tough people around her that were really tough on this horse, and she has completely changed the way she does things, and it's been a real journey for her. And she said to me, she said, you know, I'm scared to like, you know, I don't know if I'm ready to go for a hack. And I said, but you can go for a hack in hand. And she said, yeah. And I said, so why don't you just go for a hack in hand and ride a bit? You know, find somewhere where you can easily get on and off. Yeah. And if you want to ride for a bit, and then get off again. Like, there's no rules. If safety is in place, there are no rules for it. And I think this is so important for people to feel like this is a normal conversation to have. You know, we are all learning and we're all finding our way, and no one's getting it right all the time. And some plonker on your yard might make you feel like they're getting it right all the time, but they're definitely not getting it right all the time. And it's like this, I think this, like you say, like this sort of person, this friend that says, yeah, you're fine. You can keep learning. You don't have to be getting it right all the time. That's okay.
Yeah. I come back to the phrase that I use all the time, which is don't forget your joy. I'm like, are you looking for the joy? Where does the joy lead you? Does it lead you to go for a walk and then get on and then get off? Do that. My partner and I go walking with Harley, like he's our big dog, and it's literally my favourite thing to do. I adore it.
I love that.
And it has, I have to say, I mean, not to go on a huge tangent, but it has made a difference. I've done some other things too for me mentally that I think have been really helpful that we'll get into another time perhaps. But I feel the difference on him, like having done the in-hand walking when I'm riding him out on my own. I do feel the difference in his general demeanour. Bless him.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, and I think it's, you know, validating to hear, you know, you are one person, but you are having a very public experience, and I think that that's a really nice thing for people to hear that progression. You know,
yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so we have Rochelle, who's joined us all the way from Australia for this conversation, and we hope that you love it as much as we did.
This episode is sponsored by Pet and Pony. It's wonderful to be supported by them this season, as I've been shopping with them for years. And they were in fact one of my very first brand partners all those years ago. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I'm constantly running out of something. One minute it's first aid supplies, then it's a pair of new brushing boots because someone's managed to break something, then the chickens need some grit, the dogs need a yak bone, and before I know it, I've got 3 different online baskets open from 3 different shops, and that's where Pet and Pony can come in. I know I can get everything in one place, whether I'm buying stable essentials, grooming kit, riding wear, supplements, or replacing bits of tack. And the range is brilliant. They've got loads of brands you'll already know. Weather Beater, Ariat, Shires, alongside everything for your horses, dogs, cats, and other pets. I rarely go looking for something and I can't find it there. One thing I'll say as well is their delivery is so good. You know when you've forgotten something that you desperately need for the yard? Every order I've had has arrived really quickly. It's always been well packed, and it's just one of those companies that's really easy to buy from. They've given listeners to This Equestrian Life a lovely offer. If you head over to petandpony.co.uk and use the code EQLive10, you'll get 10% off everything across the site. But just don't leave it too long, because the code is limited to the first 100 uses. Once those first 100 customers have used EQLive10, the discount is gone. So if you've already got a shopping list, like I always seem to, head over to petandpony.co.uk. Use the code EQLife10 for 10% off site-wide. Terms and conditions apply. See petandpony.co.uk for the details. Back to the podcast.
So, Rochelle, thank you for joining us all the way from Australia, which I'm sure is much sunnier than the view out of my window right now.
Australia tends to be sunny, although it is raining today.
Oh, well, then we're matching. That's nice to hear, I suppose. So you are a winning FEI Grand Prix Dressage coach and rider, and your whole ethos is about creating harmony between the horse and rider. And I actually first came across you on TikTok, where you were sharing all of your kind of education with your young horses and your older horses. And I was so captivated by well, first of all, I was captivated by your seat, which is absolutely incredible. You were just cantering around, and the horse was in this lovely, gentle canter, and you were sitting so still, and you were just chatting away like you weren't doing anything. And I was like, who is this person? This is amazing. And then, so the canter brought me in, but I stayed because I felt like your attitude was so kind, but so correct. And I felt like this really could be what the future of top level dressage could look like. And I was really keen to sort of have you on. So I'm so glad that you were able to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So for those of our audience who aren't familiar with you, could you give us a little introduction to you, to Greg, to what you do and how you got there?
Okay, well, I started from a completely non-horsey family, and we had a lot of children in the family. There were usually like 30 of us at a dinner table because my dad would rescue, people from everywhere, families, kids. We'd often stop at a bus shelter and just pick somebody up that looked hungry and tired. And so there would be a flock of us that would all come home from school together in the afternoons. And where we were living, there were houses that hadn't been built yet. And there was a little old grey horse or pony, I don't know. But he looked big to me, but I was a little pipsqueak. So I would save all my lunch for him. And then I'd sit up on the fence and eat it. And all the other kids would get really bored. And I just had to be in there. And eventually I started climbing on him and hanging out with him. And so my parents thought, well, let's get her a pony, because I didn't like doing all the stuff the other kids did. I just wanted to, do anything to do with, I had horse books. And so they bought me a Shetland pony who jumped out the back of the float on the freeway. So a trailer or a horse box, we call it a float. She jumped out the back and ran down the freeway. And she was so naughty, and I think I fell off her every day. Squished, crushed, you name it. And then I progressed to, my dad bought me an Arabian colt, a 2-year-old Arabian colt. So that was my first horse. And then I got a thoroughbred off the track because he had he had a drug and alcohol rehab by that point. And a lot of people would donate horses or, all different kinds of things. And so, my first horse, a big horse, was 17.3, chestnut mare, off the track, windsucker, weaver, everything. And I thought Canada was so uncomfortable because she disunited all the time. It was so uncomfortable. But it was good fun. It was a good way to grow up. We had horses without saddles or bridles. We'd just jump on the bareback and gallop them around. And, my first piece of horse gear was a horse rug. And I'd put it on the pony during the day, and then I'd bring it home at night and watch TV in it. It just stunk. But I carried it everywhere. I was deeply proud of that horse rug. So, very, very humble beginnings to now we bought this place, and we could afford it because it was a tip when we were looking, like everything was $5 million. So this place was cheap because they'd split it in half and used this half as a tip. So we spent 3 years cleaning up old buses and rubbish and everything off. And then we eventually moved here. And now my husband is an amazing horseman, probably the best horseman I've ever worked with. And my daughter is surprisingly a rock star. She's amazing. She's just, she's a very clever little horsewoman. She gets up at dawn with me every morning. She runs the stables now. She's the manager at the stables. And we're surprised because Andy only liked playing with horses. She didn't actually enjoy the riding and dressage, and then all of a sudden she got hooked.
I'm absolutely fascinated by your story, Rochelle. This is like there's so many different things that I'm thinking, gosh, I wonder how that affected this. Or do you think
really?
Well, just the way you were speaking about the way your dad was as a child, picking up people who needed help, and then and did you say that he went on to run a rehab?
Yeah, big, massive drug and alcohol rehab that was self-funded. And he ended up getting the Order of Australia for his work with young people and alcoholics and addicts. And he's an incredible man.
Wow. And do you think that sort of kind of help anybody kind of feelings that he brought into the family, and the kind of those ethics that he instilled has helped you when you're training horses? Because I feel a bit like, you know, we don't choose the horses that come to us. They kind of, they turn up whether we want them to or not. And we have those lessons whether we're ready. Well, no, we're normally always all ready for the lesson when it arrives. But do you believe that maybe has something to do with your, like passion for helping horses, do you think?
I don't know if that's being raised to help everybody, and I channeled it into horses, you know, and I'm not one of those horse trainers that says I hate people, I like animals. Like, I like people. I genuinely like other human beings. I feel really sad for unhealed human beings that are spreading chaos and hate everywhere. But I definitely like humans as much as I like all my animals. But as far as my upbringing having an impact on who I am as a trainer, it must have. It had to have. And funnily enough, it was a lonely upbringing because I'm introverted, I'm autistic, I'm a very bizarre person, I suppose, if you take it apart. And big noisy houses like that and lots of people were an anathema to me. So I would just sneak down to the stables, and, you know, we were lucky to have stables, and we had so many horses. We had Welsh cobs and everything. And my parents were busy, so they were very supportive parents, but they didn't have time to micromanage their children. So we were experimenting. Like, I broke my first horse in when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. I still remember I was standing on the edge of this huge puddle on the driveway, and I couldn't get him to come across. So I thought, I know, I'll go around the puddle myself, and I'll stand on the other side and I'll pull him across. And as I pulled him, he's suddenly gone right and jumped over the puddle and knocked me flat on my back and ran off. And I thought, I really don't know what I'm doing here. That was a bad idea.
Learning as you go. It's funny when you talked about growing up riding without saddles and bridles, I immediately thought of Carl Hester, who talks a lot about the same when he grew up on an island. I can't remember exactly what island he grew up on. Someone will be screaming
Sark.
at their radio. That's right, Sark. And he talked about riding with no saddles and bridles, and I always wonder if it just gives you a really natural seat. It must help, I'm sure. And the other thing that's really interesting, because it's become a bit of a thread through our seasons, is you talked about having autism. And did you get formally diagnosed? Was there an age, or is it just something that you feel within yourself and you just have that?
My husband is, you'll meet him one day. He is the most laid back, easygoing guy. And the more time I spent with him, the more I thought, are you the exception to the rule, or am I? Like, it was so easy, you know, like for me, when if you guys had said, oh, could you do 4:30 instead of 4 today? I would have had to consult the diary, take a deep breath, and then mentally chalk everything backwards. And whereas Greg would have just said, yeah, fine. You know, and so that was the first little inkling. I thought, oh, I'm a little bit different. And Greg is one end of the scale and I am the other. Yeah. But it was diagnosed. I had a very bad accident and broke my jaw in 17 places, my back, got concussion and stuff. And when they were rehabbing the brain itself, which is amazing, the brain is this big piece of plasticine and it healed so well. It took a long time. But you need to be very relaxed if you've had a brain injury. And they were having trouble getting me to, you know, not try to win all the tests that they would do. You know, I had to achieve all the tests. And so I was diagnosed when I was about 30, 35. Wow. Yeah, which didn't really bother me. Labels aren't particularly interesting. It was just interesting for me to go, oh, that's why I do that. And that's why I feel differently to those people. And so, yeah, I learnt to self-soothe long before that, probably through the horses.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that, because I believe I'm in exactly the same position as you, Rochelle. When you were talking about the changing of the times, I was like, yes, me too. I would need a little sit down to be okay with that. Yeah. But I too, non-horsey family, drawn to horses. My aunt had horses in Devon, and I didn't have an opportunity other than that to connect with that part of me. And it was just all I ever wanted to do was be with the horses. I just had to get in a car and drive for 4 hours. I couldn't, unfortunately, walk walk somewhere. And it's interesting you talking about this, and I think that this will probably resonate for so many people. Like, some people don't know why they were drawn to horses.
Yeah, it's just a magical
It's just
thing.
like this kind of thing, this safety, this connection. And I wondered if you could talk a bit about sort of like, do you find that is, do you notice that in other people, maybe, is something that I was going to say, is like, do you see it more? Because me and my partner are exactly the same. He is like the yin to my yang, because I'm the same. I'm like, ugh, and he's like, okay. It's just totally fine for him. But I have found the more that I notice it in myself, the more that I notice it then in the people around me, I think, oh, okay, that's a bit of a neurodiverse tendency. Do you find the same with the people that you coach, maybe? And then maybe ways to help them better?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of a two-part question, isn't it? Like, do I find that people know why they're drawn to horses? And I always think, do you like poetry? Do you like the poet Rumi? So,
Go on.
yeah, well, you'll love him. But he basically says in one of his poems, lovers don't suddenly meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. And it's the same for somebody who loves horses, that you just... that moment that I remember the kids were all at the zoo and everybody was running around looking at tigers and everything, and they couldn't find me. And I'd just gone to the little boring farmyard and was there with the pony. And that was fascinating to me. And I'm the same with my horses now. Like of them. But to answer the second part of your question, do I find that it helps people with their anxiety, and how do I help them? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or I mean, or do you notice that, like, do you notice things in people and think, okay, that's why you're here?
Yes. I definitely, if you want to be a good coach, you become a philosopher and a psychiatrist, a psychologist. And, like my dad had all those degrees. I've studied it, but I couldn't be bothered to get a degree. I don't love academics. I'm very curious in learning, but again, didn't need the label to go through it. But I watch people because I need to learn the pathways to how they learn. So I watch and I listen and I take note of who they are to a degree. But the people that suffer from severe anxiety, which is the new plague, isn't it? Like, even Andy, we work on it all the time. The horses, I find there's a very simple path through the middle of it, because horses need you to be regulated. So it becomes essential to be regulated if you want to be a good horse rider. And so having a reason to do something, it's like working out, isn't it? Like, it's hard and it's boring and who wants to do it? But if you don't, want a big fat bottom, then I guess you have a driving reason to keep doing it, you know. And I think it came home to me the most when Andy's new horse, who is one of my horses, he we call him, he's Mr. Energy, he's Einstein. Everything's about energy to socks. And if Andy becomes a little bit worked up when she's on him, it becomes a basket case. He spooks and he's this, he's that. And he is a basket case, mind you. But if she's not completely zen at all times, he can't manage. So that's been a big driver in Andy getting up and meditating with me in the mornings, and Andy learning, okay, it's all about growth, because as soon as that growth mindset drops and she becomes like all the other human beings, chaotic and negative and whatever, her horse won't let her in. So yeah, I think it's really important to understand that when people come to you to learn, that they're not going to learn as long as they're in that anxious shame cycle. It's really hard for them to learn there.
Oh my goodness. So many things to say. That quote from that poem was so lovely. I was like, oh gosh. I think it'll be people. I mean, what a lovely idea that you were there all along. I certainly think that with horses. They're just magical. Like you said, you can't explain why you devote your whole life or every spare moment to it. And I mean, what a gift to have something in the world that pulls you closer to your best self. Like, I don't know anything that is almost just, well, apart from maybe your partner, but something strong enough to be like, I'm going to work on this thing, even though I find it really hard because they need me to. It's just amazing. I think underneath all of this, I feel a sense of relief talking to you, because I know that dressage is, you know, your sport and that you do a lot of training in that area. And I feel relieved that we have people like you in the sport, I think is what I'm trying to say. Because, and I don't know, you'd have to tell me whether it's been the same in Australia and if it's a global thing, but certainly in the UK in the last few years, there's been a huge amount of scrutiny on the top of dressage sport and on how those horses are trained, how they're ridden, the relationships, what things look like as a picture. Has that been the same in Australia, and how have you felt in that whole debate?
Well, it's for everybody, every dressage rider. It's been incredibly confronting and deeply unsettling for all of us. I mean, for the top rung of riders, they're thinking Olympics are threatened. You know, for the professionals, if Olympics are threatened, they're not going to need us to produce $1 million horses for them. You know, like Olympics was never a threat for me, but it's a threat to my profession because we sell expensive horses, you know, so people can do that. But outside of that, what I love is that it actually shone a light on people that are doing the wrong thing. It unfortunately shone a light on all the people who love their horses and live for their horses, and it caused an enormous amount of pain to the normal people that really actually love what they're doing. But it did make everybody tidy things up a little bit. You know, the trainers that were doing the wrong thing, you know, they know it's only a matter of time, if that's the culture in your stables, to say, oh yeah, he always has, you know, blood hanging out of his mouth or whatever. That's going to filter down through your staff and your students and everything, and you can't do it. It's, you know, it's wrong and you can't do it. And I think it moved a little bit too far, or, you know, moved a little bit too much left of centre, where, you know, people were starting to say bridles were an apparatus and that double bits were cruel. And, you know, it did actually, I felt, move a long way past where it was positive. But it did teach us all to be a lot stronger as far as weathering some fairly ugly troll storms on social media, you know, and the troll storms literally can be for anything, for having a bridle on, for having a pair of spurs on. And people that know what they're doing, they know that these are all aids, you know, and a top Grand Prix horse performing a Grand Prix test in a double bridle with the tail swinging, the mouth shut, and being able to accurately get to each marker in a nice harmony. I mean, that is an incredible test of horsemanship, just the same as, you know, doing an amazing event course or a beautiful racehorse. But, you know, unfortunately, I think that the sport got very heavily trolled, and it's been, for some people, really difficult. Like, some people have lost their lives, some people have had nervous breakdowns and won't ride again, you know, and I think that that's been really, really tricky. And then it's brought the whole controversy of modern dressage and, you know, old dressage and that sort of stuff. And, you know, and that's a whole nother can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a very balanced response, and I'm really interested to hear, because Miri and I, you know, last weekend we both helped at the UK's first ever bridleless competition, and like that was amazing to watch. But to your point, there's a whole spectrum. You know, those horses, a lot of those horses were trained with bridles, certainly the top level horse that was there. And I know you spend a lot of your time online and in the spotlight as a trainer. So when you talk about harmony, which is a big part of your, you know, your ethos, without thinking about, you know, the trolls and what other people think, when you're just riding and you have your double bridle, you have your spurs on, what does harmony mean to you in that moment? How do you find the balance with those aids, which could be used in a really harsh way?
Yeah, I think, well, harmony is always the horse saying yes in a way that's perceivable immediately, like a bounce in their step or not having to follow it up with a second aid. For us here, I mean, I'm the head trainer, but Greg is in charge of all of us. You know, we've got to give him his due. Like, he is in charge of producing the horses. But as far as what does harmony mean to us, we try to put the aid on, and then if the horse doesn't understand it, then we'll come give them a minute to think about it. Because often the second time you come with the same soft aid, they'll have remembered it. They'll got their body more organised, or whatever it is. Generally, it's organising. But before you then follow it up with a, hey, the pressure aid, I think that it's really important that the horses have time to organise their bodies and for you to ask a question, can he do it? So my mare has been the biggest learning curve I've ever had in my life. She's really talented, but really very specific about how she wants to be ridden. And she takes about 25 minutes just doing yoga, stretching this, stretching the jowl, stretching it both ways and all that kind of stuff. And if you ask her to go forward in that first 10 minutes, she can't. She physically can't. And it doesn't matter how much you kick or whack, she won't do it. And riding horses like her, in the beginning, you're sort of like, I don't know where to go with this with you, because the aids that we've all been taught as riders, close the calf, if that doesn't work, close the heel, if that doesn't work, you come touch with the spur or the tickle with the whip or whatever. None of it worked with her. She just wasn't interested in the training methods that we'd all grown up with understanding. She wanted the rein had to be yielded every time you asked her to activate. She had to be supple, or if she couldn't compress, she needs to be fresh. So she not too fresh, just fresh enough, So she taught me just to constantly go, so what's this then? What's happening there? She wouldn't accept the bits that all the bit fitters said fitted her. She wouldn't accept the bridle that the bit fitters that they had made for her. Her saddle was slightly unbalanced. She wouldn't accept that. So I've had to learn everything I can about saddles, bits, bridles, you name it. Because if I didn't advocate for her, the people who were trained to know what she wanted, they didn't know what she wanted. I had to know. So harmony, in a long-winded way, harmony looks different for every horse, but across the board, I want my horses to say yes, and I want them to say it lighter, quicker, and easier all the time. And I'm prepared to accept that they have limits. Some horses aren't going to be Grand Prix horses. Some horses aren't going to be brilliant Grand Prix horses. Some horses don't like soft, nervous riders on them. So harmony looks to me like saying, who are you? What do you need? What story are you walking in the door with? And how are we going to help you with that? And there's so much guilt as a trainer because, in the old days, the things that were acceptable and normal absolutely are not, anymore. And I've only come to that through my mare saying, this is not the way. So lucky for my mare testing me out.
It's so interesting that you talk about a mare being a teacher. I've had many. I own 7 mares myself. And
oh, my goodness.
Yes, and one of them, in fact, very poignantly has been my greatest teacher. Her name is Blondie, and she is sounds very similar to your horse, very intolerant of you getting it wrong, or she just is like, no, that's not the right answer until you give the right answer, and then she's a bit more open. But I wanted to kind of go forwards as such. You've spoken about horses in your life that have come to you, the Shetland that jumped out on the motorway, the 2-year-old colt that was bought for you, which sounds like
Arabian
absolutely
colt.
Hilarious bit of parenting going on there. Like definitely for the plot. But can you tell us? It sounds like you've learned a lot from horses through the years. But have you had any? Who trained you? Did you have people who were really poignant as coaches in your life?
Well, I've read a lot. So you have to say Alois Pajowski taught me the most because he was the only one who had books back in those days. So I read and learned a lot from his books. And then when I was younger, I travelled. I haven't travelled since Andy was born, but I'm just about to start again. But we went to a lot of amazing stables, and I learned a lot just watching in the warm-up arena. In the old days, we'd have the VHS tapes you'd put in, and I'd watch till I wore them out. I'd rewind it and watch how they rode a half pass, and then I'd rewind it and see, right, which hand did they drop, which heel did they put down, and I just watched the same corner over and over and over again till I could see what setup they did through their short sides and stuff like that. And then I was really, really lucky, and I got to do a demonstration with Carl Hester last time he came out here. And I took one of my baby horses, and the whole, he's a delightful human being, and he made it really fun. I couldn't remember which hand to put out to shake him. I was so excited to meet him. And he looked up at me and he said, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, freaking out. And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm just shitting myself." And he goes, "Oh, good then. That's perfect. That's how we like you." And my daughter's standing beside me going, "Shut up." So he gave me a really great lesson, and just there was another piece of the puzzle where I'd been like, I need to know more. I mean, obviously, if you want to ride good dressage, you've watched Carl Hester and you've watched his demos and that sort of stuff. But things that are specific to your own horse, like if you watch a great demo and he's talking about riding shouldering down the long sides and that sort of stuff, that may not necessarily apply to your horse that has been ridden in shouldering and now needs to learn to ride a straight line or whatever. So he gave me a great lesson, and then I asked him, whether we could work together ongoing, and he recommended his best friend to me, Nikki Barrett. I don't know which way you know her.
Yeah.
And she's amazing. She's really professional. She turns up on time. She does her bookings properly. I don't know if that's a problem in Europe, but in Australia, getting people to actually finish their bookings off and to give you regular attention, and she has a brilliant sense of humour, and I like laughing, and I like riding. I don't want to be told, that I'm stupid and useless, and I can tell myself that for free. I don't need to pay somebody a fortune. So, yeah, Nikki's been the biggest influence on my career so far, for sure.
That's really cool.
Oh, I love it. And I have to ask about your seat. How did you get your seat? Like, what do you do? Because I'm not the only one. I know I'm not. And now that I'm in a dressage saddle, actually, I find that my seat is much quieter, and I've now got room for my thigh, which I didn't have before, and all the rest of it. But
yeah,
what are the things that you do? I'm sure it's natural now, but were there things in the beginning that you did to kind of sort your seat out? I always remember Abby Lyle talking in an interview about how when she started training with someone, because she came to riding quite late, I believe, or dressage quite late, she went systematically through her body with this person, I believe, or her training, just to kind of fix her dressage seat. And I always thought that was a really funny way of talking about it mechanically. But yeah, are there things that you did or people you trained with that brought it up?
Well, my very first lessons were with an English lady who had a little riding school down the road. Her name was Mrs. Gould, and she imported 2 nice geldings. She was so lovely, and she'd teach me at 6 o'clock in the morning before school. She was amazing. And she must have instilled a fair bit, because there's one occasion where they'd forgotten to put a girth. They'd put the girth on, but they had only done up, when you just sort of sit the first hole, and if it's a girthy horse, and then you sneak, and nobody had done the girth up. And I was tiny, and so I climbed on, they call it a senorita box, where you climb up the stairs and just sort of leap across onto your horse because I was so little. And I did the whole lesson with no girth. And I remember she came up and she said, "Right, everybody stop, everybody stop." And everybody stopped me, and they said, "This child sits so still without even a girth." And I'm like, "That's right, bitches." I was so proud. I'm assuming she had a lot to do, all the bareback riding, and then a natural progression to her. And then just over the years, you just consistently do your top to bottom. Is my chin up? Are my eyes forward? Is my sternum up? Are my thighs long and loose? Are my heels down? And, the checks sometimes, especially for horse riders, you guys would get it being eventers. If you've had an injury, that you'll have to have something to help you. If you break your wrist, you'll have your left hand won't sit right. And we'll do little things like just have a pink glove on the left hand and a blue glove on the right one. So you just have little reminders all the time: stack your thumb back up, curl your wrist. Particularly so if you have something, like terrible posture or something, we had to have little tiny, like a piece of wood behind your elbows. That'll help you with bad posture. That's what we were raised with. Yeah. We were raised with a broom handle behind our backs, and
love it.
It was a bendy schooling whip for me, but still the same thing. Yeah. It's really interesting that you. Yes, all right. I don't think we can do things the way that you did things, Rochelle. We have to be careful now. But it was interesting that you say that, because I do the same thing, but by mistake quite regularly. Like, just forget to do my girth up. The girls will be like, Miriam, do you want to die? And I'm like, no, I'm just balanced. It's fine. I'll go for I'll ride and I'll get off and I'll be like, oh.
You've got your Equitex now, though, and they're very good.
Yeah, the saddle pads are very good for the not gripping. Can you talk to us a bit about, I want to go back now, like we're doing some backwards and forwards, but so do you compete? You compete now?
So lots of people have asked me that, because I took last year off, and so I won't go into too much detail as I cry all over you and ruin my makeup. But our principal client for a very long time became my closest friend, and she was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer and died not even 6 months. We didn't even get the time that we thought. We thought we'd have it till Christmas. And so I can compete through anything, shit weather, pneumonia. I could have competed through my grief and shock too, because you just learn to compartmentalize things that have to, horse riders have to get stuff done. But I felt it was frivolous and pointless to do that, and for her to be going through chemo and me saying, oh, I'm going to a show this weekend. It just felt rude to not take her such a battle seriously. And it was very nice for me to go back to enjoy it, because there's a rhythm with showing where the week before the show, so say you have a Pre-St. George horse, you'll drop all their piaffe passage work, because if they're younger, so that work will, it's very gradual, the increase into that work, and it makes them a bit hot, and so you have that rhythm, and then you'll say you have a horse that overturns in a canter pirouette, you'll spend 2 weeks just coming to where the canter pirouette is and just making a nice flowing volte, and then making a volte in travers, and then collecting on the spot and going forward again. So your mind is always on building mental strength for the horses coming into the show, and then after the show you're looking to the next one and deciding what exercises you will and won't do. And so last year was in a way was a gift as well, because I just rode. If they felt good that day to try something, I tried that. I spent we did a lot of work on the gallop track, because I tended to want to just, if I was able to, I just wanted to enjoy them, which was, so it was good. But to answer your question to the point, I have a beautiful team of horses, and they're all fit and strong. And if everybody would just stay healthy and we could have no crises, we'll be back to competing in no time.
That's really cool. And I'm sorry to hear about your lovely friend. That's really devastating, and no doubt a big shift in perspective for you, maybe, in terms of like what's really important, I guess.
Absolutely.
Like for you shifting from, yes, I go to a show every weekend, to actually no, there is something bigger than that. And that's, I'm sorry that you went through that.
Yeah, thank you.
When it comes to competing now, we touched on kind of, the spotlight on the sport before. Is there anything that you spoke about harmony in such a succinct and eloquent way. Is there anything, can you touch on sort of what you think maybe goes wrong? Why do people come away from this harmonious thing? Because when you hear in top riders being interviewed, even the ones that have been thrown under the bus and had, terrible, shameful things that have happened, often people will come back to the fact that they love horses. They say, oh no, I love horses and this is it. And even, the horsemen or the horsewomen that are really tough, and you've seen that, it's kind of come up and down in their career. Everybody comes back to this. We really love the horses. Do you have a kind of idea of why this happens? Why, even though we love horses and we grew up loving horses and all the rest of it, that sometimes it goes the wrong way?
This episode is sponsored by Honest Riders. The horse care industry loves to use words like natural, eco-friendly and sustainable. But when you look a little closer, many products still contain synthetic ingredients, come in single-use plastic, or simply don't perform well enough for horse owners to keep using them. Honest Riders was founded to prove that it doesn't have to be a choice. Their products are made using carefully selected ingredients, refillable and recyclable packaging, and formulations that are designed to deliver real results. Because sustainability only works if the products work. From their best-selling mane and tail elixir to their bug barrier and grooming range, Honest Riders is helping horse owners care for their horses with products they can genuinely trust. Find out more at honestriders.co.uk.
Yeah, I do actually. It'll probably get me in trouble telling you about it, but what the heck? So I have a very nice young horse, and he's 18 hands. So he's a very balanced 18 hands, but and elegant. But he's bigger. He'll take more time. And I had somebody just come to have a look at him. I was test riding him. I think it was just before I took the year off, and he said, it's really lovely. It's just boring. And I was like, okay, that wasn't the feedback that I wanted. I just wanted you to say something nice and lie to me, but. No. And he said, it's very correct. I can't pick anything that I want to change, but, where's the power? Where's the... And I was like, he's 5 years old. I don't care about power. He doesn't need to have any power. The exercises themselves will, he'll have to gain quickness and power and throughness to do them as he moves through his work. I don't have to make power. It'll just be there when his tendons and ligaments are strong enough and whatever. Anyway, I thought about it and I thought, what a weird comment. The more I thought about it, the more I thought it was weird. And then we went to CDI Nationals, and I watched my friend compete, and the test it's a very ordinary horse, just, he's not anything crazy wonderful. But the test was really beautiful. It was just beautiful to watch. There were no, you sort of sit there and go, oh my God, just going to ground in the next pirouette too. You can see, are they swinging in the changes or are they tense in the piaffe? It was just beautiful. And 15 steps of piaffe, at X, and it was so nice. Anyway, it scored 53%, right? And I was like, and I can pretty much tell, even when I ride myself, what the scores at this show were all very low. Anyway, I happened to be at one of the judges' places the next day. She had a big a do on there. And I said, I'd be really interested to, I don't want you to feel attacked. I don't understand the scoring of that test, or several of the others that I thought were actually really nice. And she said, for me, it was just didn't have any punch, had no, there was no... And I said, but it was correct. Like, it was correct. He did all the things, if you read a textbook, what piaffe should look like, the footfalls. Anyway, and we started to get a little bit with each other. And I said, this is where it goes wrong. Because if that can't score, what's she going to go home and do? I got to make the piaffe better. And I spoke to the rider too and said, I've just got to get the piaffe bigger. I've got to get the piaffe better, and I'm older now, so maybe the trot needs to be bigger. And I was like, honestly, it was really lovely. I wouldn't change anything. I really enjoyed it. And it was the sort of horse you thought, I'd like to buy that horse. I'd like to sit on that horse. Like, it looked nice to ride. And the one that won was not mistake-free, which there's no pressure to have a mistake-free test, but to score well in Grand Prix, it does need to be mistake-free. And then it had a big guy on it, and he was in trouble out there. Like, I thought, thank God I'm not riding that. Like, I wouldn't have been able to hold it. Like, he had the reins in a carriage hold, and he was in all sorts of trouble. Amazing rider, did an amazing job, but I couldn't see how it was better than the neat one. And so that's where it goes wrong. When you're in a warm-up, and I looked around in a warm-up once, that was probably one of the last shows I was at, and I saw this horse trotting past, and I thought, wow, oh my God. And I watched a bit more. I thought, it's getting a bit uneven. Oh, that's tense. And anyway, I went back to work. And then I saw it getting ready and going up to my ring. And I said to Greg, that's not in my bloody class, is it? And normally I don't look like, I'm very specific about how I compete. I stay in my own lane. If I see something beautiful, I'll watch it for a minute, but I don't. But it was shocking. Like, it was so much more powerful than my horse, and the trot and everything. Anyway, I blew its brains out in the test and didn't do well anyway. But I thought afterwards, that's again, where's our rider's coach saying that's not even, drop it down a gear, it's still not even. Like, and there were coaching headsets in, and and I never criticize other riders, except in this circumstance when you ask me where it goes wrong. It goes wrong when people are just pumping for power and power and power, because that's what's winning.
That story is really helpful because it's so visceral, but it makes me really sad because I can totally imagine, and I'm sure actually, Miri, you've probably been in this position with your dressage at some point because you ride at a higher level than I do, but where you go home and you've had a mark, like your friend, and she's like, I just need to get more power, I just need the PF to be bigger.
Yeah.
And at some point in your training, you start going, I don't like how this feels, I'm losing the nice connection with my horse, I'm losing the harmony, I don't feel good about asking in this way. And then you're at the point where you're like, okay, but if I want to compete, I have to do this. So have you ever felt in your own training that you've had either feedback directly from a judge or from just the environments where you then go back training and you're like, but I don't want to do that. I don't want that in my training.
I don't want to push for more. Yeah, many times. And I was at a dinner party once, and the Grand Prix horse that I had at the time, he's extremely laid back, like extremely. He was our family pet, and we just kept going with him because what the heck, he loved being with us. And somebody said something about his piaffe, and I said, he doesn't have a good piaffe, but I'm just happy. I just go for sixes, and that's all I'm prepared to get out of him because he's not good at it, But then I go for big fat 7.5 for everything else, where he's really talented and balanced and whatever. And one of the other girls at the table said, "Oh, that is so surprising. Can you just say that again?" And so we talked, and she said, "I've never heard a rider actually stop and go, my horse has limits, and I'm not pushing them, because to make that horse piaffe." To wake him up enough to piaffe, I would have had to do really bad things to him. And I like him. I love him. I didn't want to do that, and then I don't think it would have worked anyway. So, yes, there have definitely been times when I've put too much power in and lost the rhythm and the harmony, but the horse tells you straight away, with behaviours and like bolting, bucking and crooked, like they're all the horse saying to you, I can't do that. You're giving me too much. Too much is coming to me. But then there are horses like Glamourdale and Tortillas and Vallegro who can take the power, more power. They're just unbelievable athletes. Just like there's ballerinas and then there's ballerinas. So I think that the powerful horses at the very top, who are like Wendy, like watching her is just like, whoa. But to get a normal horse to do anything like Wendy's piaffe, it's not going to do it. It's not possible. So you just go for what is correct. And then the rest just takes care of itself. But I can definitely see how people come off the rails and go, oh, well, if I'm consistently getting a 6 for that, that must mean I've got to, go home, do more, ask more. And that may be true in some cases, but in a lot, the horse just possibly doesn't have a bigger mark in him.
Yeah. It was really interesting. You said there about these like select few horses, right? That are literally like, like it's like a Secretariat, which when they did a post-mortem, his heart was, I think it was him, he had this enormous heart. Like his heart was just genetically far bigger physically than most average horses. And that was what enabled him to be...
had the biggest heart.
It was him. That's the one. Farlap. And that's what made... Yeah, absolutely. Of course it was an Australian horse. That's what made that horse able to do that. And these horses, like you spoke about, Totalis, Vallegro, they are Lordship's Gruffalo, that lovely horse that Ross Cantor rides that won badminton however many times. They are different horses. They are, you can tell it's not like there's a little gap between them and the rest. There's this huge gap because they are able to do these things at this amazing level in this different way. And I said something recently. I said, I think that there should be less top horses because, you know, just have a smaller field of these amazing horses that do this amazing thing. But I don't know how we get from where we are to where we want to be with that.
Yeah, it's very tricky, isn't it?
It would require a top rider who has aspirations of going to the Olympics to say, actually, they're a 6, not an 8. And that is a very hard thing to ask someone who has dedicated their whole life to, especially if, and I think if you're a top rider and you're like 20% away from the Olympics with your horse, let's say, and you're being told, okay, you can actually, he's here, this is his level, this is where he's comfortable. Or if you just push that a little bit more, you could get to the absolute pinnacle. I actually think it's very, very difficult for people to say, I'm just not going to push that little bit more.
Well, it depends on the people, doesn't it? You know, if you've produced the horse from a baby, you're going to know if you push that little bit extra in the wrong way, if you're going to spoil that horse's happiness. But if you've just bought the horse and you don't know him, you don't know. You know, this is why we produce all our horses ourselves. Not that I have any problem with somebody going out and buying an expensive horse. That's lovely. But I think that the Olympics should be a place for horses that you've made. But, you know, if you took all the top echelon of wealth out of it, it still wouldn't change the medals. You know, it really wouldn't. You look at all the top riders, they're not from wealth anyway. But it would give people who possibly have produced horses quietly and strategically a better shot at getting onto that stage. Because I don't know what it's like in your country, but the Australian funding, there's absolutely no funding for, or absolutely none, very minimal. And if you don't have your own funding, you're not going to get on a team in Australia. So, I mean, it's very controversial, isn't it? But I do think that those very, very tippy top horses that we're talking about, I mean, you look at Glamourdale, Anna Van Ulster's produced, I wouldn't even know how many Grand Prix horses. Countless. So since the moment he was started, she knew which patterns to follow and which ones that wouldn't work. And so it's not just that horse is a freak. Lottie's a freak. She was produced by Carl Hester. Her mother was amazing. You know, Anna was Carl's coach and mentor in a lot of ways. Like, how could he not be an amazing horse? Yeah. You know, Glamourdale, in the wrong hands, wouldn't have been anything like what he is now. So, you know, people look at Andy and say, oh, you know, she's riding so well, but she should be riding well. You know, like she's been brought up in a professional stable. That's all she's ever watched is people doing things properly, taking it, you know, seriously. So, yeah, I think the Olympics has got, it's going to undergo a lot of changes over the next 10 years. And some of them seem a bit scary to me.
Yeah. I think you're right about the funding. You know, I've had riders in the UK, I've heard, particularly for dressage, it can be very difficult because in order to unlock more funding, you have to have a string of horses who are, you know, coming through and going up the levels. And actually, it takes a really long time to produce a horse for the top level. And you're in the position where you're like, well, if I want to get funding this year, I either need to buy a horse who's halfway there to prove that I'm on the track, or I need to push my young horse to go quicker, and I don't want to do that. And it's a really difficult position to be in. And I understand too, from the federation's perspective, they've only got so much money. They need people who have more than one because they can't put all their eggs in one basket or whatever. But it does put a weird pressure on the riders to have more money,
churn them
out, exactly. And don't love that.
Yeah, it is difficult I mean, we can pick and choose clients a little bit now, but I've annoyed a lot of people refusing to hurry horses along.
Mary will love that.
Yeah, I had once had I do a lot of starting, Rochelle, and I had a horsemanship like people, they were asking me to come and do a demo, and she said, I hadn't heard about you directly, but when I spoke about you to somebody else, they said, oh yeah, that's the person, she takes ages to back horses. And I was like, good great.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased that that's what I'm known for, because if people are willing to turn up and buy into the system that I follow, then it's the horse chooses the speed, not me. I can't make them be ready, and I really believe that if you have got to make something happen, you are going to make a compromise somewhere else. And I think this is so often the thing, the people who are pushing horses too quickly, like you were saying, to kind of go through a system or ask for more power, there is compromise somewhere, whether it's in the horse's body physically, tension, whatever it might be. And I think I grew up, it's interesting, like I grew up very much learning all of the things I didn't want to do before I learned how to do the things I did want to do. I didn't get inspired first. I got shown the horror first, basically. And and so now I spend all my time trying to educate myself in a way that means how softly can we do this? How can we, like you're talking about, finding this harmony, this essence of kind of clarity with a horse. But I do think that enormous part of the problem, and I wonder if you could touch on this, is the financial situation for riders. The driver of needing results, needing to sell horses, pushing the horse to its absolute limit so that it can make the money they need it to make. Can you touch on that a bit? Because I think it's something that isn't often spoken about, actually. It's kind of this taboo thing, like nobody talks about money because, I don't know why.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, having grown up and doing so much business with Germans and Dutch and that sort of stuff, like money is always on the table. You can talk about it. Australians are very funny about making money and talking about money, and it's a sort of a taboo subject. But it's important. If you're going to have an interaction about money, you need to talk about it. But we find with a lot of clients that we lose them within the first 60 seconds of the phone call when they say, oh, so such and such is going to break the horse in 6 weeks and he's charging $500 a week. How much do you charge? And I'm like, I'm not a trainer for you. Why did you even call me? This is not, you're not comparing Kmart and Woolies here. If you're coming to me, it's because you've seen or heard something that I've wanted to, that you've seen that I like, that we're specialists in what we do. But as soon as they have to budget around their training. I understand everybody has to budget, but when they're deciding whether or not they're going to have a good job done over 3 months or 6 months, if the horse is really, really, really tricky, or whether they're going to get the guy to do it in 6 weeks, that's the point where trainers, need to step away and say, well, I'm not doing that. But unfortunately, there's always somebody younger and stupider who'll jump in and do it in 6 weeks for $500, ends up coming back to us anyway to fix it.
I was going to say, and then they're going to end up spending 100 times more money because they've ended up. It's so much easier to train a horse that hasn't been altered or made nervous than it is. I always say that to people. If you're considering this, I would consider doing it the right way first, not the wrong way and then the right way, because that's much harder.
The short way is always the longest way, definitely. Yeah. But to speak to us all struggling and the industry itself, there's very little to protect a trainer or a rider, in this industry. You can sack your coach with no notice. You can not turn up. There's doctor's surgeries that's not allowed. It's different. We have in place that our students all pay their lessons a month in advance, and that can be however it looks for them. Twice a week, 3 times a week, once a month, whatever. But whether I'm a horse trainer or not, we still have a mortgage and bills to pay. So if you employ me to do a job, employ me properly, because I can't do my job properly if all the bills aren't paid in advance, because the hay guys want to get paid when they arrive. It's very tricky to survive in the horse industry, and you need to learn to pivot really, really quickly. If there's no horses coming in for starting, well, looks like you're training them to go across the cross-country jumps next week. There's times where we've just taken literally anything that's been offered to us because you've got bills to pay. But I think the most difficult thing that every horse rider says is how expensive it is, and they struggle to do the right thing by their horses because of money. And I think that's a really difficult problem to solve. I do think if trainers stuck together a little bit and we had regulated training fees and lesson fees and that sort of stuff, that would possibly even out everybody squabbling over clients and undercutting and that sort of stuff, because there's a lot of that happens as well, and that's not good for anybody. I think if there was an agreed starting rate for all the trainers, that would probably help a little bit of it. But we're paddling in a rich man's pool, so it's always going to be a little harder to keep up. I remember seeing a post once and the guy said, "It's not about money why I do this." And he's trotting past a castle in the background. And it's like, yeah, well, you don't have to worry about money, but the rest of us have got to get the arenas topped up and,
Just going back to that point of like having a standardized thing, I did my level 3 coaching, and they did give us some kind of like guideline to follow, which was really useful because it can be really scary putting your prices up, and or being, valuing yourself enough and all the rest of it.
True.
And I'll never forget, there was this Facebook thread that went on, and somebody was looking for a coach, and I don't know why, but for some reason I got like suggested and said, that me and X person sang off a similar hymn sheet. I don't know why that happened. And the other person who was apparently singing off the similar hymn sheet commented and said, "Yes, but my hymn sheet's cheaper." On a public forum. And I thought, God, like I would never in a million years consider doing like saying that. Maybe privately if I needed to be like, I just want to, I wouldn't even do that, actually. I wouldn't even say it privately. But anyway, I just think, yeah, you're right. Like, if we were all together in a community as it would make a big difference. And I guess, there's a lot of competition, I suppose, between people to...
Well, we're very heavy on horse trainers and very, very slim on wealthy people that want to pay you and, keep your horses in training for the right amount of time. So it is going to be a little bit dog eat dog, but we have a policy that when horses leave here, whether they're leaving under a cloud or they're leaving because they're finished or whatever it is, we send them with a week's worth of feed. We send them with whatever the lollies they like or whatever, and just a really detailed video or list of don't get on this horse straight after you girth it up, so that the horse at least has a flying chance when it goes to the next trainer. It's never been done for us, never. And I always will give the trainer a call and say, your client's going to leave you. They're looking for somebody else. She's offered it to me. Is that okay? And of course they need to say yes. But it gives them some agency that maybe, that they're still a part of making decisions over something that they've probably risked their life to make happen. The owner's going to go anyway. So, but those conversations, a lot of people don't want to have them, which is a shame, because as a horse trainer, you cop an enormous amount of flack for everything, because it's a difficult thing and people are paying you a fortune, but, we're still probably getting $3 an hour sometimes. It's the fortune of what horses cost, not necessarily our labour. But yeah, it's you have to be incredibly tough to keep on liking human beings when you're a horse trainer, because there's some interesting people you come up against.
I mean, I'm not a professional like Miri, which is part of the reason we have the podcast together. I'm an amateur and I keep my horse with my coach. And I do think in the last couple of years in particular, my friends or my peers have gotten a lot savvier about where they choose to spend their money for the better. They're not looking for the cheapest coach. They're looking for the coach that is kind to their horse, speaks kindly about their horse, gives them the right advice. I will never forget the first dressage lesson I had with a new coach who I absolutely adore, Melissa Beer, in our area. And she spoke so kindly about my horse, and she really got him straight away. She advocated for him very quickly, and I thought, you're my person. And I do think that it really matters. And when you do have a good advocate, my coach is great. She looks after my horse as well as coaching me, so she has a 360 view. And when I went to buy him, he was my first young horse, and she called the guy selling him, who was a show jumper, selling him on behalf of another amateur, and they had a whole chat as professionals, and she was like, you know, she's not perfect, but she does everything I ask her to. You will not have anybody on the yard looking after him better than she would, and she'll have me and blah blah blah. And they were able to have this conversation as professionals about, you know, the because he really cared about this horse. He really, really liked him, and he felt a huge sense of protection for the owner as well. And of course I bought them, but I think she was a huge part of that. And so having the right coach to be your advocate is really important. And I think you've built that in your reputation, both of you, actually. So, yeah.
We wanted to talk a little bit about your social media, Rochelle, because not only do you manage to ride around on a horse doing relatively hard things, not out of breath at all, which I always think is remarkable. There's this girl on TikTok at the moment who's doing it too. She jumps around a whole course of fences, not out of breath, completely describing it, not having to think about the stride she's on, just talking about it. And I was reminded of your videos when I saw her the other day. How did you get into doing TikTok? Because I mean,
it's so weird, isn't it?
Drove you?
Well, I don't love, you know, computers and all that sort of stuff. I like being out in the barn, but I started Facebook when I came back from a trip overseas, and I wanted to stay in touch with the people that I'd met and that sort of stuff. So I jumped in the deep end and downloaded Facebook. So. And when we first started, people asking, oh, could you show me a video on how to make a canter or whatever? Facebook, you couldn't load it there because they would only take the 60-second videos or whatever it was back then. I can't remember. And we didn't have the website up, and I didn't know where to put them. And Andy said to me, you can put videos whatever length you want on TikTok, Mum. And I was like, yeah, but, and everybody in Australia thought that TikTok was for child stalking. Like, we were all told to be scared of TikTok. Anyway, so I put a couple on there. And then one of the girls that came to work for me, she said to me, I'm meeting the famous Rochelle King-Andrews. And I was like, who? What are you talking about? And she said, because you've got, I don't know how, like 20,000 followers or something on TikTok. And I said, so you have followers on there? And she goes, you post on there like once or twice a week. And I was like, and I didn't understand even how to use it, how to even access messages on it or anything. Andy showed me how to upload the videos, and that was that. So I did not set out to build anything there other than just help people, because I didn't know where else to load the videos to help people. So, and then the website grew from there. And the community's really nice. You don't realize how many people are like, oh, I struggle with that too. I'm feeling really alone. You know, I thought it was just me. It's really cute, and there's a lot of support there. I'll often notice, you know, when somebody gets on and says, oh, you know, you cut your horse's mane, you're a butcher, you know, rah, rah, rah. And I'll often notice somebody else hop on and go, it's okay to cut their mane, it doesn't hurt them. Stupid stuff like that. And I think the industry needs more of that, where other riders will hop on and say, rubbish, it'd be silly. You know, go back out and hug a tree. Not that there's anything wrong with hugging trees. I love trees too. But, you know, there's things I think that as riders we could all band together a little bit better, because the trolling won't stop. They're just bullies, and bullies stop when enough people stand up to them. You know, and if I can ever be bothered to stand up to bullies, they run with the tail between their legs pretty quickly. Yeah. You know, I try and be kind, but sometimes it's just like, stop being so silly. Yeah. So to answer your question, how did I get into social media? By accident.
I think it's really powerful though, and we've talked about it before on the podcast, about how particularly riders at the moment in this climate, like if they don't control the narrative will get created without them. And I think your horses are your best advert, because when you're riding, your young horses, even your babies, they all look so relaxed. They're happy to be there. They look so light and soft off the aids, and you show them, you know, on the trails, and they all just look like they're having a really nice time. And horses aren't going to fake it for the camera. They're not going to be like, no, I'm filming, so I better look relaxed. Like, they just don't. And so, you know, it's a lovely advert. And when I did start with my 5-year-old, I remember thinking, look at Rochelle, she's such an inspiration, because look at her young horses, you know.
Thank
They
you. Well,
are.
that's Greg. Greg just throws me on them. He does all the stuff that makes them like that, and then I just sit and go up, down. But yeah, I'll take the compliment. Thank
Let's
you.
talk about Greg. Let's give him a moment in the spotlight because you've mentioned what an important part he is. So, talk to us a little bit about what he does with your young horses and your older horses.
Yeah. Well, Greg and I were best friends our whole lives, and then we got married. Oh my goodness, 30 years ago or something, a really long time ago. A- and we've just always maintained the relationship that we had of the respect of two friends. You know, I think that's a really important thing, that you always surround yourself with people that you think, wow, I dig that. I love it that you knew how to do that. And so there's always been a very strong respect between Greg and I. We do things completely different. We're different coaches. We're different. We're different, even in the way that we manage staff and stuff. We're completely different. But Greg starts them all. He teaches them all the long reining and that sort of stuff. And if we've got a lot of horses in training, Greg will warm them up on the long reins for me if the girls are busy. He's a beautiful rider himself, and he just started riding again. He hasn't ridden for about 15 years. He got new hips and started riding again. So yeah, he's a cool guy. His clinics actually sell better than mine because his are all about connection and relaxation, and people that are sort of scared of dressage riders can get a nice dressage grounding with Greg, but not be held up to the standard of you need to compete next weekend. So yeah, he's actually a lot more popular as a coach than I am.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, not see why he'd be more popular than you, but I do remember the first time I booked a lesson with a dressage rider, I didn't do it for years because I was so afraid of them being like, do this and do that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ooh, but actually they're all really nice because they know also, I think the majority of their coaching money, I think, probably comes from grassroots riders. And then they obviously have their
absolutely.
So there's that.
Yeah.
So one thing that you've talked about quite a lot, Rochelle, is how your young horses spend a lot of time on the trails. And I seem to remember videos of them in the forest and things, which is all very cute. So tell us a little bit about that. Well, maybe give us a view into like a week in a young horse's training. And let's go for a 5-year-old just to pin it for people.
Okay. All right. On a Monday, any of the horses who are larger than life will all have a lunge. The laid back ones and the real baby ones can sleep in their paddocks on a Monday, but we'll bring in the really sassy ones and just touch base with them so they're not too much for the grooms to lead out or whatever. And that because Monday's a day to do stuff like this. I have business meetings or I'm usually in meetings all day Monday. So I love to get out and have a little lunge. On a Tuesday, Greg will long rein them and give me a heads up on when I can get on them. 5-year-olds? No, by 5-year-olds, I've taken over everything with them. 4-year-olds, Greg will start them because they're still only doing sort of 10, 15 minutes. So most of their work is about ground manners and walking through that puddle and long reining up past the scary thing. And by 5, they'll usually have a little spin around on the lunge unless they're really reasonable. But of course, we don't get sent so many reasonable ones. People do those ones themselves. And then Tuesday is all about touching base with what they already know. It's sort of, we just exercise them on Tuesday, but we just do transitions and muck around with all the stuff that, I'm just checking, how's that feeling? And then I sort of mentally set a program for the week. I used to write it all down when we used to have, between 60 and 100 horses in training all the time.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, no, we don't have that anymore. But we had to have meetings with each of the trainers about, goal. Because some trainers are great and some are a bit too intense with pushing them too quick and some are a little bit slow and need to bring them on so the owners get, the best value for their money. And anyway, I digress. Then Wednesday we will have picked something out of a test that they're getting ready for. 2 things out of a test that we're getting ready for. So that at 5, there'll be some shoulder in the trot and maybe some playing with the accelerator in the canter to get the canter walk really nice. Depending on where it is in the show season, 5-year-olds will usually finish with a flying change and then get a treat. Just so we put them in, they get put in when they're 3. And then they're usually left a fair bit in the 4s because they're still very reactive as fours. But when they're little babies, we'll just change direction and let them do a change. We call it an eventing flying change. So their just hind leg will come through eventually. Sorry, girl. And then Thursday they all go down the back or out on the roads. We don't go out on the road so much now because suburbia is closing in, so we've still got a fairly big land holding, but the traffic's gotten really bad. So with the gallop track gives us a much better opportunity to have fun without thinking you're going to get cleaned up by a road train or something, or the lady in the BMW that's built the mansion down on the corner and driving to school too late. And so taking them down the back when they're young gives us an opportunity to say, oh, that's what you're going to do when the judge rings the bell out of their car and it frightens you, or, oh, I see that's what's going to happen when another horse beside you gets too excited. So we're having a little look at, okay, this is who you are and this is what you're probably going to need at a show. We often find that the absolute worst behaviour that we're going to need to put boundaries around will happen down the back, because the deer, the kangaroos, the echidnas, the snakes, there's a 1,000-acre government reserve behind us with donkeys and beautiful old horses. I don't know what, there's just seems to be all these horses. I don't know where they came from, but and of course they will really put the wind up some of the young ones galloping up to the fence. So the older horses are just, they might get a bit high, but and then Friday, we'll use the information that we've gained during the week is 5x5. Usually on Friday, they're tired already. So Friday might look like doing 2 other things out of the test. We might actually do the canter walks that day or the counter canter. Definitely trying some extended trot quite frequently at 5 to get the trot rhythm, covering ground. And they need to learn to create the trot. We're starting to tap into their gears of the trot. If we're noticing that they're lying down more, in the morning, they're covered in sawdust or whatever, that's our cue to take them down the back, if we can, with a quiet one for a walk so they don't get too excited, or to give them, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. If they're still travelling okay, then by Saturday we'll test ride. So if we're not at a clinic, the girls will set up the cameras and we'll all video each other, put ourselves under that kind of pressure of having to canter at that marker, whether the horse is ready or not, and learning, whoa, I needed more half halts or whatever. And then Sunday, everybody has a rest. They get the big hay nets. They've got a bale of hay in them each, and they just eat all day, and so do we. So or if we're at a comp. So, yeah, a week in a horse's life is basically Monday's easy. You do whatever suits you. We have one that when he goes on the lunge, he goes crazy. So he gets a hack out down the back. But, yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday look a lot like work. Thursday, they don't do anything. If we have really, really cheeky ones that go mental on the gallops, they'll do a few show jumps before they go down, just to sort of get work and canter them around for half an hour before I take my life in my hands down the back. But yeah, the routine, you can set a clock by it. So I ride the same horses at the same time every day. That's just because I'm weird. But it's really great for clients because they don't have to book them in. They just know, oh, she rides Buddy at 11 every morning. The staff know, the horses know. And we find that the horses all settle really quickly because, that's why we're drawn to horses, isn't it? They regulate when we keep everything regular. We co-regulate because they're calm and, they're breathing steady. And, yeah, so we just have that vibe here all the time. Everything's the same all the time.
Lovely. And how lovely that you notice, they're lying down a bit, let's back off them for a few days, they're finding it hard. That's so lovely. I think some people miss those cues and they would keep going regardless, or maybe they'd be like, oh, I'm not going to school, but I'll hack, and actually just being like, actually, they're still young, they're finding this hard, they're growing or whatever. That's really nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably in the right business for liking horses.
Yeah, absolutely. And that summarises really nicely. Rochelle, I have a question that I ask every guest. And
this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, well, hopefully. If you had one piece of advice that you could give to every equestrian, and they kind of had to do it, like they had to take it on board, what would that one thing be?
Oh, that's easy. Just be curious and be patient. You know, when you stay curious, you lock out your ego. And when you stay patient, you lock out the, oh my God, if you don't get this flying change by Saturday, I'm going to have to kill myself. You know, like being patient and curious to go, why aren't you getting the flying change? Not you should be. So my curiosity has led me to study more, to think more, to observe more. And my patience has stopped me doing the things that you regret later. You're like pushing them too hard or giving them too hard a smack, or, you know, there's so many things that patience will lead you away from. So yeah, that would be the two things that I would say, because curiosity instantly puts you in a frame of mind of, what can I learn? You know, you never stop learning. I'm more fascinated by horses now than I was when I was 8 years old.
Oh, that is so lovely. Miri has this lovely phrase that she tells me all the time, which is should is just could with shame attached. And I feel like
Yes.
could is should with curiosity attached. So that's nice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And, you know, watching my little girl grow up taught me a lot too. She's very much like her dad. She has a very even, very cool personality, but she's got a little bit of intensity that must have come down through my bloodline. And watching her going from being a child who children rewire instantly. You know, they can get told, no, you can't have the ice cream, and 2 seconds later, you know, they're really upset and then they're fine. You know, and you lose that ability to regulate quickly and be happy quickly again as you become an adult. And watching Andy the first couple of times she was getting ready for a comp, and I was like, no, she's going to spoil it. I don't want her to compete thinking, you know, like, oh, is such and such going to be there? Are they watching me? Am I going to do a good enough job? Is my pony going to buck me off? And what I thought was really interesting for Andy was just to constantly say to her, darling, you just wrote, you know, she wrote a Prince of George test for the first time the other day. And she said, I didn't get the this or that. And I said, yeah, but you know, a week ago, you had never ridden this horse before, and 3 months ago I wouldn't have put you on a 17-hand client horse, you know, and so that you're always growing, and teaching her that growth mindset of that's okay. Maybe we're not going to win today. Maybe we're just going to make up the numbers because we need some information on why this horse is not, you know, doing exactly what we want them to. So helping Andy with her mindset is absolutely concreted mine that there's only one way to live, whether you're a horse or a human being. And it's just constantly being grateful for that was amazing. The hard stuff is challenging, sure, but I can do hard stuff. I can get through that. And having to teach it to Andy so that she retained a bit of that childlike, you know, life is so easy. You know, it's been really, really good for me too.
Oh, Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been wonderful and so inspirational.
Good.
And I think, you know, it's so lovely to hear someone who is at the top of the sport and so in touch with that, speak in such a open and honest way about it. Because I think, you know, if we want to keep sport, if we want to keep this as a sport, we've got to be having these conversations. And I know you said I might get myself in trouble for saying this, but actually I think that these are the conversations that we all have to be having. It's not negotiable
absolutely
anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the bridleless competition, like I love that. It's time, like, why should it make any difference if I mean, it would make life easier for me because my mare travels better in a halter than she does in a bridle. So, you know, everybody said to me, you're so kind, you're so beautiful. I'm like, it's actually just really easy. And she doesn't try to kill me when she's in the halter. But all those things are really important to make it more open. And for all of us to feel a little bit more heard. It's always been such a closed industry. Everybody pretends that they're okay, and they put ridiculous reels, taking a 2-second good bit out of, you know, a really tricky ride, and you know, and there's no emotional vulnerability in dressage, and there's certainly very little openness, and I don't think it's good for the sport. So conversations like this where people feel, you know, free to say, I just really love my horse. I just cannot wait to get up in the morning and go and see him. I don't think that stuff's been discussed enough. And it's so true of so many of us. Like, how many of us want to go on holidays without our horse?
And it's that curiosity, isn't it? I think the bridleless competition was saying, can we? Could we? What would that look like? It's not saying this is the only way. Everything else has to change.
Might look like a lot of horses streaking across the showground at full speed sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. There's been a lot of people just like taking their bridles off, and I saw a very scary video yesterday of somebody having a very bad time with taking their bridle off. And I think the kind of I'm sort of involved in the background conversation around it, and the thing that I keep coming back to is like, what are we trying to show people when we show them that you can ride a horse without a bridle? Because the reality is, of all of those people that were at that show have put years and years and years, and I mean it, there's some of those horses were 20 years old, into that relationship and that connection with their horse. It's not a quick fix. I've learnt it myself. I've been learning how to ride one of my very trained horses bridleless, and I'm like, gee, crikey, I can only steer if I've got reins. And maybe that's because of the way that I was taught, or whatever it might be. But it's been so interesting to kind of dive into the background of that. And I feel like, actually, Rochelle, if you were to just to do some small things, you would probably find that because your seat is so good that riding without a bridle would actually be a possibility. But it's kind of this, like, I don't know, there's this shift taking place, and it's like, how can we all be part of it in a way that enables freedom of speech and inclusivity in sport, rather than like, no, don't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. I'm not going to tell you what you should do or what you could do, but I'm going to tell you what you shouldn't do. Yeah. And I think that's hopefully a place where things are going to start being a bit more cohesive.
Well, I think as long as there are riders who think it's okay to tear people down at the dinner table because they've got nothing else to talk about, and to come and whisper at shows, did you see that test? Wasn't an awful test, and that sort of stuff. The more riders that say, yeah, I saw the test and I thought she did a really good job, best job she could do, and you're not allowed to talk about people at our dinner table at all. Greg and Andy love a bit of a gossip, so they'll go outside and pretend they're getting firewood and have a bit of a natter about somebody, but like, I won't do it at all. And that's a culture. Not allowed at the table, because it makes it's just ugly. It's not necessary. There's plenty of other stuff to talk about. And I would love that as a whole in the industry. That old thing, if you can't say something good, just don't say anything at all. I think that would really, really help the industry too.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.